All right, what do we think of Kevin Durant's quotes? There's a couple of things here. I was thinking this is interesting. So Chris Haynes did a sit down with Kevin Durant. You guys know Chris Haynes' background? Anybody?
Do I know Chris Haynes?
Yeah, you know who Chris Haynes is, right?
Yeah, I know him personally. Yep.
Okay. Do you know his background?
I don't.
I believe Chris Haynes was like a security guard, and like, I'll have to go back and remember, but I want to say like he was like a security guard who then like made it to like he's a guy who's like alternative hire or whatever, but he has unbelievable relationships with these guys and became like an elite level reporter, right? And now he does like sidelines for Turner. He's worked for ESPN. He's kind of worked for everybody. He's one of these guys that dudes really, really like him, but it's because he's like a normal, regular guy. Anyway, KD sat down with him, right? And it was, I believe it was after they got blown out by the Kings, which is a weird timing. But he said a lot of things which have generated a lot of attention, as everything he says does. He said this about a trade request. It wasn't that difficult at all to request a trade because it was about ball. I went to them like, yo, I don't like how we're preparing. I don't like shoot-arounds. I like practices. I need more. I want to work on my stuff. Hold me accountable, et cetera, et cetera. He claims to be having fun. He claims that he's more lockstep with Jacque Vaughn because they're preparing better. And he claims that people who say he's not a leader, they're asking him to do things that leaders don't do, like, why don't you make Kyrie Irving fall in line? Why don't you make him get vaccinated last year? Why don't you do things? Let's welcome in Ric Bucher. Ric's covered the league for, 25 years now and does it for Fox Sports. You can read his work at foxsports.com. Also has his own podcast as well. Buch, what do you take of Kevin Durant's comments to Chris Haynes?
Well, the timing wasn't very good to be singing the praises of Jacque Vaughn and better preparation, considering it. I believe it landed right after they gave up 153 points to the Sacramento Kings. So there's that. I had a scout say to me, that wasn't, they gave up 153, and with all due respect to the Sacramento Kings, that's not Run TMC or 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns. It also comes at the comments come at an odd time because they're still mired in the controversy of Kyrie Irving and trying to resolve all of that. There are times where Kevin Durant will come out and speak his mind, and I've always appreciated that he will tell you what he's thinking. But in this case, it gives you an idea of why the Brooklyn Nets, in spite of their talent, are the way that they are. Because it's not just a matter of leadership convincing Kyrie to get a vaccine and play, even though that's exactly what Draymond Green and Steph Curry did with Andrew Wiggins. Identical situation. Andrew Wiggins to this day still will tell you, he wishes he hadn't gotten the vaccine, but he did. Ended up being an all-star, ended up winning a championship with the Golden State Warriors, and everybody's moving forward. So you can have your own personal thoughts, beliefs, whatever. If you're playing for a team and you're playing for something, sacrifices have to be made, or you don't get your end result. And that's the part that I don't think Kevin gets. And it was disturbing that he would say, he would focus on that as a thing that is reflective of the misunderstanding of what leadership is. And then later in the comments, he's throwing his teammates under the bus, as well as Steve Nash, saying, well, look at our record, but what do you expect for the guys that I'm playing with? Again, making a comparison to how Steph Curry handled the year that he dragged the team to the play-in. He wasn't disparaging about the guys around him. He was, even now, with Klay Thompson, whatever it is, I'm going to pump up the guys around me. I'm going to try to get the most out of them, whatever that might be. That, to me, is leadership. That to me is part of being the best player on the team, whether you like it or not.
Well,
if you want to have success.
This actually, and I've never been in that position because whenever I've interviewed somebody, I'm like an analyst at heart, but it's also the way in which I interview. And I mentioned Chris, who has his rise has been meteoric, and he's really well liked by players, which is a huge part of the industry, right? You have to have, you have to be liked. You also have to be respected on some level. Shouldn't there have been some, is this a place where you can have pushback when you're Chris Haynes? Again, I haven't conducted these where you sit down and you let somebody talk with it. Cause like in the simple pushback is like exactly what you're saying. Isn't that what leadership is? Like, help me out here. Like all of these things, saying your teammates aren't good enough, which no one's going to argue with you, but you can't say it. Right. And I understand that trying to convince Kyrie to do something might be the opposite of the right tact, considering how confrontational he is and how defiant he is. He might do it. He might not do it just out of spite, but isn't that what leadership is? Is there a place there when you're conducting an interview like this for pushback?
Well, you're asking me to comment on the state of sports journalism in general. And
no, it's more from your personal perspective. You have done this is your field, right? This is somebody asking me about, hey, if you do a 3-hour radio show, like you've done this at the highest level, so
you would but it's the state of sports journalism today. Those tough questions, whether it's in a post, and I've been going to a lot of games lately, and the questions are softball questions. Every single question. Everyone is afraid to ask a pointed question. And I can only suggest that part of it is that, to your point, access is everything. Yep. And so reporters will roll over and not ask a tough question for fear that it will cost them access, and legitimately so. And that's in part because the league is not making access required to a certain extent. It's because the outlets are not demanding that those questions be asked. Like, it's, oh, you have access. Well, we don't care whether it's legit or how you got it. We just want access. And so and when I say, it's a comment on sports journalism, it really is. I've been in this for a long time, and I just think about the guys that mentored me, the guys that I saw and I aspired to be. And there was a couple things there. One was you asked the tough question, and I admired the guys that were not afraid. It doesn't have to be incite, and you don't have to incite a riot. You don't have to be accusatory, but you got to ask the question. And those questions now are not asked. And it takes a certain amount of bravery. It also takes your outlet to back you up.
You got to support you. That's a big thing. They got to support you.
To support you 100%. And so that's not happening. And then the other part is, if you're going to be critical, if you're going to write something, you got to show up in the locker room the next day. You got to give that you got to give that player, you got to give that person, you got to give that team the opportunity to respond if they didn't like something. Potentially, they didn't like something that you wrote or you said. Like, all of those rules of engagement have gone out the window, and so it's tough for me to see how sports are covered today, because I can't do that. I'm not going to. We build relationships. You know how this works. You build relationships, but you don't hand over the keys to the car. You have to have a certain amount of autonomy as a journalist, where if somebody comes to me and wants me to break a story, they're going to give me a story, but I have to write it the way that they want me to write it. It's like I've turned those down because I can't give away. I just can't give that away. Well, looking around, I don't see that everybody is holding to that, and they're being rewarded for it. So I can't blame them, but it's different rules of engagement than I came into the business with.
what is the actual level of concern from the Warriors with their failings on the road?
I don't think it's just failings on the road. I think it's overall. It's not there, and they're deep considering the solutions aren't there. As much as Klay Thompson may say, we're about to go on a run and I'm about to come out of it, they realize that defensively, they don't have a whole lot of answers. Klay Thompson, he's not. This is the biggest difference that I see with the Warriors, is that in their heyday, they had 3 stoppers, defensive stoppers: Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green. The only guy left capable of doing it is Draymond Green, and he can only do it in spots. Gary Payton and what he did coming off the bench last year was a big help. The veterans who were able to play off of the Warriors, and the fact that the Warriors got healthy at just the right time last year while everybody else was getting hurt, all of that came together, and I think it gave people the illusion that that this was another dynastic run about to start. I don't know that was ever the case with. I don't know that the Warriors coaching staff ever quite saw that. I think they realized that the young guys, Jonathan Kuminga, James Wiseman, Moses Moody, they made the transition into making those guys instead of Bielitsa and Otto Porter and Gary Payton. And you may say, well, what's the big deal with those names? Well, all of those guys know how to be role players. They all know how to play off of Steph Curry and Draymond and Klay and do their roles, which is defend and be available to knock down open shots, be in the right place at the right time. They just don't have that now. They don't have that intrinsic basketball IQ and understanding coming from the young guys. Those young guys you're asking to play roles, they've never been role players before. Now you're asking them to play role players on a team gunning for a championship. It's a bridge too far. And you compound that with the fact that you don't have any wing defenders when that used to be your strength. Klay Thompson is getting, forget his shooting, defensively, he's non-existent. Jordan Poole's never been a good defender. Who's defending? I mean, you just go down the list. They can beat a San Antonio Spurs team and wallop them because the Spurs don't have anybody who can create their own shot. You play any team with dynamic wings, the Warriors are going to be in trouble, especially without a rim protector. I love Kevon Looney. He's a great player. I mean, he's a great role player.
Right.
An intrinsic part of their championships. But he's not a rim protector. So you got leaky defenders on the wings, and you have no rim protection. That's a recipe for disaster, no matter how many points Steph Curry scores.
What's the deal with Wiseman?
That's a story that I want to dive into. I will say this: I like being around that team this season. Wiseman wants to be good. I think he's a good kid. He seems to want to be more of or has the ability to be more of an offensive weapon than a defensive weapon. So he's a misfit in terms of what they need him to be.
Right. The role that he needs to play is not the role that he wants to accept, and you combine that with the fact that hasn't played enough basketball at that level. He's not even ready for either role.
It's all of that. It's all of that. So in a way, the Warriors keep saying, he's got potential, and we're not giving up on him, and all that. And I get all that, and I get it from his demeanor where they genuinely like the kid. I just don't know that he can improve and develop on the timeline necessary to make good on what this team has left. And I will add this, and I've been told this by people on the team. It's like, for all the problems that Wiseman has defensively, don't ignore the fact that they got a lot of other guys, the veteran guys, who aren't playing defense. So it's not like you're asking him to be the eraser or the fixer for a lot of other defensive issues. I don't know if he could play the role that they need him to play if everybody was playing well, but you certainly can't look to him defensively and say, take care of all the mistakes that everybody else is making. That's you're clearly asking him too much. And here's the other part is with the team at the age that it is and the lack of practice, like, how do you get – I understand why they sent him to Santa Cruz, because you're not running 5-on-5 to give him every opportunity to tune up his defense. The only way you tune up defense is playing 5-on-5. They can't afford to do that in real games because they're losing them. And so they don't practice, so you can't do it there. So you really don't have any other choice but to send him to Santa Cruz and hope that he can get some of those defensive principles down and bring them back.
Lakers had a 4-day break after beating the Nets, but they're still 3-10. You got the Pistons, the Spurs. So you got, I think, 3 games, something weird. 3 games count up against the Spurs. So you got some wins to where you should be able to get closer to 500. But and they have an Ed Schroeder, and he's close to coming back as well.
Yeah.
But this is even with Russell Westbrook statistically playing well since going to the bench, they still aren't winning. Are they going to ride it out, or are they going to try and fix it?
I've been told they're riding it out. That it's a matter of if there's any cavalry coming, they hope that all of the things that are happening with the Brooklyn Nets prompt the Nets to finally just waive Kyrie and make him available, and they would then look to pick him up. That to me is one angle, but. I'm talking to people around the league about the Nets and the Lakers and what they're expecting, and they feel like the Lakers, the Nets, it's now. We got to see what we can do now because we're probably tearing this thing down in a year. For the Lakers, we're playing for next year. We're looking to see what we can do once Russ's money comes off the books and what we have, and we still like. That's my understanding is it's not like the Lakers are going to chase and try to make some big bonanza of a move in order to salvage this season. I haven't heard that from anyone. Not saying it can't happen, but no one's given me any indication that the Lakers are thinking that way.
Buke, awesome stuff, man. Great insight. Good talk. Let's do it again. Thanks for joining us.